Okay, here we start again. Some of the other phone's gone. We're on to the second phone, but we're going to start again. I'm with the esteemed.
Joel Jammal, nice to be here.
And we're going to have a discussion about where we are as a community and as a resistance, what problems we're facing, and ideas of how to move forward and how to fix those problems and how to get somewhere better than where we are. So let's begin. Let's start first with what problems you think we're facing. What are we doing wrong?
Well, first off, welcome to Sydney. It's great to have you here.
Oh, thank you.
We hope you move here permanently. But second off, I would have liked to talk about, what we've done right, but you do need, if you want to address any problem, you need to recognize and define what the problem is. In the first take, I would have said to you that, a lot of people that don't know where they come from. They don't understand their history. They don't understand the history of their parents. They don't understand the history of their value system. In Australia, people, rather than understanding and grappling with tough problems, they would rather do the quick fixes, pornography, fast food, rather than buying quality products that are made in Australia or made with a higher level of standard and quality. They would rather go with the cheap fixes, the cheaper version which breaks instantly, and we apply that not just to consumerism, but also to our marriages, rather than have a marriage and the moment you come across a significant problem working on that with your partner as a relationship, because relationships are bumpy, we'd rather get a new one, just like with the things that we buy. That's a problem. And, historically in the past, we weren't like that. We used to sort of grapple with things and work to move together. So in Australia...
Do you think in the past, though, that was because poverty played a part? When times are harder, people generally stick together. And we've had an affluent time where everything you're saying makes sense, but it's coming from a sense of affluence where you can basically live a hedonistic lifestyle.
Yeah, that's debatable. That might be right. I think that people, back in the day when they bought things, it was more aligned with quality because the standard of craftsmanship was higher. Because they were competing with other craftsmen who were also really, really good. And there's a whole history on guilds which you could look at on that. But I think that mass production and the corporatization of making things, something as simple as a hammer, you wouldn't believe how many different ways there are to make the classic hammer with the fork at the back, to pull up nails with. There's amazing different things that you can do. You can get a quality hammer where you just, it actually has a magnet at the top of it where you can put the nail and hammer it in, or you can get just a classic hammer that'll last you maybe a few months, and then the head breaks off because it's not made from quality steel, or the handle breaks. It's amazing the amount of different ways that people have substandard levels of living than what we used to have. We used to live on we used to have one income which would support, 6 kids or so. Now you require 2 incomes and an extra job for each of the partners just to pay for 2 kids and keep them in school or daycare. Something's happened. What's happened? And once you realize that we don't know who we are, we don't know what we stand for, how the hell can you say where you're going? I mean, it makes no sense. I think that, a lot of people that have been saying that we've been slowly deteriorating as a country the last 50 years, they're often the same people that say we can fix it in 2 years. That's not how the world works. It takes time. Slow gains, they are hard to lose. But if you make fast gains, then they're quick to go. So our revolutions are very unstable. In Australia, if we want to turn the country around, people need to recognise what is it that makes our country great, what values do we have, how do things work? People are just working out how things work. How many people are in the lower house, the upper house? How do we get someone elected? How do you pressure and communicate with your parliamentarians? These are things that people used to know how to do 40 years ago. Now we have no idea. They have to tune into a guy like me who was bricklaying 3 or 4 years ago to work it out. Like, that's how bad things have gotten. And I'm not an old guy. I'm only 25. And so once you realize that, okay, 50 years ago, that's where we were. That's when we had a better country where you could have equal opportunity to actually, go out to the market and, create something for yourself and your family, and you'd have greater purchasing power. Now we don't have that. Now, in the past, of course, we had racism. We had a lot of different things that barred people, women, from voting, and people like myself with eyebrows like mine may have been shut out from the corporate world a bit more. But we've moved past that. But there are some things in the past which we had right, which we've lost, and we need to go back to that and recognize what that is. And so,
Perfect example is the Anzac myth. I mean, we thought that was, how would you say, untouchable even. Like, that's it. We celebrate them. It's holy. It's sacred. And yet this Anzac Day, I've interviewed soldiers who have gone overseas fighting for us now who can't attend the RSL because they're not vaccinated. So the Anzac myth is gone, and we did nothing. So they're saying, lest we forget, we forgot.
yeah, we forgot.
Maybe we never remembered in the first place. It was just a myth, but we forgot.
Yeah, and it's so bad with some of the more radical left-wingers in this country. They say that the Anzacs were racist. And it's like, oh, is that right? Some of them even have gone as far to say as the Anzacs were Nazis. And these are the conspiracy theories of the left that we see. But this is the thing, guys. If you don't defend what blood was spilt, because freedom isn't free, it was paid with the highest cost in blood. When you don't defend what you stand for and where you come and why you have the freedom to do what you want to do in this country, then why are we surprised when we give it up and disregard it so flippantly? I described it during the lockdowns in 2020 as pouring the blood of the Anzacs into the gutter. We're just disgusted by, I've been so disgusted. Everyone's been so disgusted by the disregard for our freedoms in this country. And we did lose them. We did, I'm up for $29,000 in legal fees just to give a speech on Parliament, or on town hall steps. You've got your own legal fees to do with the shrine. A lot of people have. And we don't have free speech in this country. We're working that out.
Tell the people from Melbourne what happened about why you got this far.
Oh, that's an interesting story. We're actually only around the corner from Town Hall. On the 24th of July, there was a protest that was organised by... I'm not an organiser, others organised it. And in Sydney, it was a very organic coming together of people. And it was during the adolescence of the lockdowns in New South Wales. They first started to bring in the mandates for the jabs, especially in the construction industries, even though there were no cases on the construction sites. They brought them in and they started to mandate that construction sites be locked down and also have a jab, your first jab, in order to get in. The jab rate was about 25-30% at the time. People weren't liking it. And a lot of the alpha males in the construction industry came out and they said, we're not happy with this. Not at all. And they ended up protesting from Victoria Park and marching to Town Hall. However, there were no leaders there at the time. There was no organisers. The organisers had been intimidated by police, even though they'd done the work in promoting the event. And so the police were stuck with some 30 to 50,000 people. And I don't throw numbers around flippantly. I'll tell you if only 10 people showed up. There were some 30 to 50,000 people that showed up, and I have the photos to prove it. And when it came to the amount of people that were there on the day, the police had their hands tied. They didn't know what to do. No one was listening to them. Everyone was saying, F the police. I ended up being in a very unique position because I've never organised or spoken at a protest in my life. And while I was there were very few people in New South Wales that could stand in front of that crowd and tell them to do something, and they do it because they don't trust anyone. I've described the freedom movement as herding cats that think they're lions. Well, the madness of crowds, you don't understand what that feels like until you're there. And so having that eyebrow recognition or facial recognition where people recognize who you are and they trust who you are and what you're going to say, it's very rare. So when I was there, I did end up helping direct people to Town Hall because that was the plan, right? The police weren't in control of the crowd. I was meant to be just covering the protest. But the police were not in control at all. And rather than crush it, they only had a few hundred police officers. They had to roll with it. And they facilitated the protest. And they asked me, Joel, we need to get people to Town Hall as per the organisers. wishes. We needed someone to go in between to get them there. And I was like, yeah, sure, look, I'm not going to disobey a direction. I'm just media. I'm just meant to be covering this. You're not meant to be the story as media. But on that day, I had to break that because I was asked to. And the people were going to get hurt if I didn't step up. And so I did. We got the people to town hall when we were there. People were getting very agitated. They were starting to clash with the police. Whether the police started it or the people did it, I don't know. Because the police were tackling people. It was an absolute mess. And I ended up saying to the police and pleading with them, you got to give people something to look at. They've come here. They've come to spread a message. Some of them lost their jobs. Some of them about to lose their jobs. These jab mandates and whatever. If you don't let them express what they've come to say, they'll just keep on. They'll bust through the police line. They'll keep marching through the city, and they'll keep shutting down the city. That is not what you want. You don't have the numbers. And so they went back and forth, got on the phone with his superiors, and then police operations, they came back, and police command said, okay, give them the mic. And they gave me a red microphone. It wasn't working. I grabbed one from the crowd, stood up on the steps, and I just asked Gladys, what's wrong? Why are you doing this to the people of Liverpool? Why are you locking everyone down? Why are you making it hard for people to make a living, and especially for the construction industry? I shared people with some vulnerable details about the death of my father and, what it meant for me and my family, and how I lost my job in the construction industry, something I'd been working in for 9-10 years by that point. And it was well received. The crowd was very fired up. I summarized my speech points to about 4 points to summarize the concerns of the people. And after that, people turned around and they went home. And then what followed was disgusting. They started to hunt us down. The next day, it was my dad's birthday, the 25th of July. And they rocked up to my house at 9 o'clock at night after we'd visited my dad's grave. And they served me with 3 charges: breaking the health orders, leaving my area of concern, and gathering in a group, which I can do. I could do all of that because I was media, and the police asked me to not do that. And then the third one was incitement, which I thought was funny because it has jail time. There's 6 months jail. And people were hunting down and ratting on anyone that went to that protest. There were over 5,000 reports made to Crime Stoppers. I have no doubt at least 1,000 of those were for me because I was the person on the steps. My cousin John Bernard, the TikTok guy who was predicting cases in New South Wales, was also there. He got the same charges as me, and he's been in court. And the media have been trying to rubbish him as well, disgustingly. But it's only building his following, so keep it coming, media. And yeah, now that is the price of free speech. I'm facing $29,000 in legal fees. And I'm not crying poor. I've never asked people for funds for my legal fees. That's fine. I can sort it out, guys. No worries. But these are the things that are going on in our country. And a lot of people that don't realize that. And when they do, I'm sure you would have seen, you've interviewed thousands of people the last few years, they say, I'm sorry, I had no idea. And it's like, guys, we've been suffering. We've been getting absolutely smashed in our states. Victoria more so than New South Wales, but New South Wales as well. And what's been amazing has been seeing people like yourself, like the mothers in southwest Sydney that I told you about, that were feeding people during the lockdowns. The angels stepping up and feeding those families that were downtrodden. Money was going. They didn't take a cut for themselves. They were putting their own money, their own time into feeding families food on the table because the government had abdicated their responsibility. And that's amazing. And that's one of the things we've got to remember that we did very well, is we've built a community. We've built people that will look out for each other.
And it's growing.
And it's growing. And the tough part is now recognizing what we did right and mainstreaming it, making sure that we get out to more people. We just had an election, and we worked out that 10 to 20% of the country in each state are freedom fighters. We narrowly missed out on a number of Senate spots. We managed to get one up in Queensland, one in Victoria. That's phenomenal. That's really good. just missed out in New South Wales, just missed out in WA, just missed out in South Australia, just missed out in Tasmania. It's hard to see. But even if we got those Senate spots, we still wouldn't have had the balance of power, just because of the way that the numbers worked with Labor and Liberal. And that's fine, no worries. But elections have consequences, and we are in for some rough 3 years. Now, we're going to fare pretty well because we've spent 2 years building a community, but others, not so much. The I Stand With Dan people, the people that like the Labor Party, the people that like the Greens and the Teal Independents, they're going to get what they wished for. Rolling blackouts. We're going to struggle with the cost of living, and they will not have a community to fall back on, but we will. We've got the strongest 15% in the country. We can command, as a community, as a grassroots. If we say we want to hit up Canberra, hundreds of thousands of people rock up to Canberra from across the continent. That's real power. Scott Morrison, Anthony Albanese don't have that power.
Well, I was saying that there's no way the mainstream media and all the politicians could motivate that many people to come to Canberra to get the booster. Yeah. Never going to happen.
Exactly, and we've been able to muster hundreds of thousands of dollars for campaigns, for lawsuits, for helping people get out of jail. There's a whole bunch of things we've been able to do. We've quantified that we've got command a significant portion of the votes. We are in a very good position in that sense, but there's no denying it. We are in for some rough 3 years. We had a lot of people step up and do something that they've never done before. They put their hand up, they ran as candidates, they helped other candidates run their election, they volunteered, they've done stuff they've never done before. That's amazing. That's them engaging with the democracy for the first time ever. Now and
across the country.
Across the country. Now that's great, but we should have been doing that for the last 40 years.
Yeah. Like even my branch stacking joke that I told you that you like, when I bring that, people go to me, older than me, go, yeah, I thought the same.
Yeah, exactly.
I have no idea, and they don't ask because they've got too old to ask what branch stacking means, so they just don't care.
And that's the thing. That's another triumph we've had. We've built an entire new media class. People that had completely tuned out of the mainstream media. The mainstream media who used to have 90% sharehold over the entire viewership of the country. Now they've got a dwindling few, million every night. That's nothing out of 25 million.
Compared to the money they're spending.
Yeah, considering the money. See, you don't advertise. You don't get billboards up advertising Kiss Radio or anything. You stand on the merits of your product. God forbid you start advertising and mainstreaming it a bit more. Then they're really stuffed. The great level has been the internet. Despite censorship, we've done very well. I mean, building a following of 10,000 on
102.
102,000 on Facebook, despite censorship, despite people giving you raw stories, not censoring it at all. That's amazing in such a short period of time. That's got real value. Building an entire media class where we can educate people about how democracy works. What are the real issues? What's the truth on the ground versus what the spoon feeding from the government talking points are. That's real power. That's something that I'm not losing, and you're not losing, and your audience, to the mainstream media. This traffic flows in one way, and all we've got to do is just bide our time and wait for them. They don't have the camps, they don't have the facilities, they don't have the police force or the military size. As much as I wish the military was bigger, it's not big enough to put 15 to 20% of the population in prison. We've effectively quantified and staved off what they're probably planning. But this is the thing.
That's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary what we've done the last 2 years, and that's not us. That's not you. That's not me. It's us. We played our parts. We worked with what we had. We to the best of our ability. You and I, we did exactly what we needed to do in our own ways, with the skills we've been given: storytelling, producing, and me just telling people about politics. But we did it as a community. We did it together. We did it because we have shared values, and that's what makes us so amazing. I'd trust you with my kids. I'd be like, I just watch my kids for, a few minutes while I go around the corner, because we have shared values. We come from the same value system. I don't trust these other people. I don't trust these, these people that have very questionable views on grooming, and, the age of consent. No way I'd trust any of them with my kids. Not that I have kids. But I think that going forward, we need to recognize what we did well and also what we didn't do so well. We had a lot of mistakes the last years, a lot of squandered opportunities. There was censorship wasn't. There were times when we were doing very well with censorship where it wasn't so bad. I remember when Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp went down all in one day. I remember all the influencers online freaking out. Censorship was reduced to zero. It was completely, gone. Rather than rather than your stories on Instagram, for example, only reaching 10% of your following, it was reaching 38 to 40% of your following. That's huge. That's amazing. So if you had 20,000 followers, you'd be reaching something like 8,000 of your following. That's really good. Now, going forward, people need to recognize we're in this for the long haul.
Yeah.
And that's not me moving the goalposts. I've been always saying that.
It's a marathon.
It's a marathon. It's a big one. Building culture is hard, and you've been doing a really good job with that. But it's going to take some time chipping away at this masterpiece, and it's going to be very interesting to see how we bind together for the next 3 years. We do have some state elections coming up. I have a feeling of where I think they're going. I'm not sure what people are going to think after we've concluded them, but where things stand right now in the country, we've got Labor governments in every state and territory except New South Wales. We've got Dominic Perrottet with a hung parliament, which is very vulnerable, and we've got Tasmania. And I wouldn't even put stock in New South Wales. So we're probably going to see a situation where top to bottom in this country, mark my words, we'll come back to this in March next year. I suspect we're going to have Labor governments over the entire country except Tasmania because they don't have an election for a while. And that's not easy. It's going to crush a lot of people. A lot of people already are leaving the country.
Then why are we voting for them?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. And we need to change tactics in many ways. We can't keep preaching to the same 15-20%.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I tell people everywhere that come round, you've got to believe you're in an echo chamber. Not everyone thinks like you. You're telling people you've got to wake them up. Maybe tackle the belief that they've already woken up. They just got up on the different side of bed than you. You got up this side. Maybe integrity is not such a big thing to them. Safety overrules integrity.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of work to do now on an individual basis. You know what you're doing the next few years. I know what I'm doing. We're going with the flow. We're adapting our strategy. We are in a form of war. And
say that thing you said about plans.
Yeah, sure. So as I was saying before about war, the first two casualties in war, or deaths in war, the first is truth, and the second is your plan. Now you've got to constantly be adaptable. They killed truth a long time ago, and that's where people like yourself and myself have come up and been trying to get the word out there. But also with plans, people have also been looking to us for plans. People need to work out that there's no one coming to save them. And that's not me moving the goalpost. That's always been the standard.
You're talking white hats.
White hats, yes. Don't get me started. I've been calling this QAnon stuff out for a very long time. And these ideas. If someone's telling you to trust the plan, what is the fruit of that saying? It means you do nothing. No worries. This guy's going to sort it out. Don't worry. Go back to your life. Go back to sleep. That's not how we're going to solve this. Everyone is a leader in a different way. Everyone should be a leader in their own lives, in their own surrounding. They need an injection of Jordan Peterson, in my opinion. And because once you, as Jordan says, once you sort out your own life and you start to take seriously what you're doing and you do it with intention, then that has a chain reaction and you start to inspire other people because courage is infectious. And as I learnt at the town hall, in Sydney, I think that a lot of people need to be leaders in their own lives in recognizing what is it that I'm doing to safeguard myself over the next 3 rough years. What am I doing to put my worries at ease? Are you worried about food shortages? Are you worried about your own job security? Are you worried about your safety of your kids and being indoctrinated in schools? What are you doing to get yourself and your family in a better position? That's the question that needs to be asked. I'm doing everything I can. within my power. I'm using the skills that I have to do what I need to do. When people ask for my advice, I give it. When people need information on certain things, I provide it. But I can only work with what resources I have, whether that's my own knowledge, being one guy, or having more team members on board. I only have a certain amount of financing. I work as hard as I can with what I have. Everyone else needs to do the same. And stop looking to people for
Savior complex.
savior. Yeah, no one's going to come from a cloud and save you. That's not how it works. We're meant to. Life is about struggle, and through struggle you'll become stronger. You know, I've changed a lot the last 2 years since I lost my job. You know, when I lost my job, my dad was still around. I had a stable job, and I had money in the bank. I didn't have to worry about a target being over my head. Anonymity was great. But a lot's changed right now, and you can't just step back to where you used to be. You can't just ignore the fact that things have changed. So going forward,
We'll go forward. Two things. One is we're asking people to break away from the narrative, to question it at least, and maybe come and join us in the fight to create a new Australia, a better Australia. What is the benefits to joining a minority group, a minority band of resistance?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty cool in the sense that we are people who actually know what we believe in, and we're not the types to be pushed over. It was really funny when we went to Canberra and we hit up Canberra in February this year, because what we saw was there's a lot of people who come from other states where the police presence wasn't as bad. And the Victorians, who had been absolutely smashed, shot at by rubber bullets, you know, my girlfriend included, were all stepping up and saying, no, we've seen this before. We've got this, guys. No worries. Get behind us. We'll lead the way. And that was great. That was really cool to see. But, you know, this movement isn't for the faint-hearted. And so we've got this cool concentration of alpha males, females, you know, leaders in their own area that have stood up and done a hard thing, which has not gone with the mainstream narrative, not for the sake of disagreeing. That's not the point. It's on principle. And that's why you need to know where you come from. I'm disagreeing with the government mandating the jab because on principle, I stand up for the little guy. It's bodily autonomy when it comes to that. And not bodily autonomy when it comes to abortions. That's a different topic. You're killing something in the womb. That's its own person. Bodily autonomy when it comes to the jabs is to do with the fact that you are taking that person and you are blackmailing them by making them lose their job, lose their income, lose their ability to support their family. That is not on. And you know what? The jab handbook on how to do jabs stipulates that you can't do this to people under duress. You can't force them to take the jab. So that's on principle. That's on understanding who you are, where you come from, and what you stand for. And being, you know, courage is the ability to know what you're actually standing for. I think it was John Anderson who said, if wisdom is the ability to understand consequences, and courage is the, you know, ability to stand up for those, you know, and stand against those consequences, you know, why are more people not standing up? Especially in universities. There's a lot of smart people in universities, a lot of professors. We can't assume that they're brave. We can't. There's a lot of cowards out there. It's not always the smartest guy that stands up first. Sometimes
Girt by cowards is my saying, instead of girt by sea.
Yeah, that's right. Indeed. I think that, you know, we're in a pretty good position in the sense that we're learning, we're growing, we're working things out, we're working out how elections work, we're working out what nefarious games the AEC likes to play every now and then. You know, I think it's been somewhat exaggerated, some of the things that the AEC have done, but there are some major things where it's like, what the hell is that? I mean, you guys got to fix up your act, and they've got some major ground to make up because of what some of the things they've done. But I think that going forward, you know, there's a lot that we need to do to help mainstream what we're doing. We've done very good at securing 15-20%, but there are a lot of radicals in our ranks, which I'm not rejecting, unless they're inciting violence. But they do scare off a lot of the mainstream people that need to be slowly introduced to what's going on. If you tell people what's going on with the jab, they're not going to believe you straight away. They need to understand, hey, here's a girl, Sienna Knowles. She had a major side effect with one of the jabs, and what ended up happening with her was, she's a young, fit equestrian. She was 19 at the time, athlete. Why is it that she's got this at such a young age? This condition, which I won't say because it'll get censored. Well, something's up, and I think that in time, more and more people will join our ranks because traffic is moving in one direction. People are joining these alternative media platforms, and they're working out because the stupidity of the government is growing, and it's growing to different areas. It's only a matter of time before it reaches different new areas, and then people work out, oh, here's a community I can join. And yeah.
The other question that people are coming up, because some of the ridiculous things I've heard is people go, I don't mind giving up my freedoms for now, and then when the government fixes everything, they'll give them back to me. This is from intellectuals. This is from university trained artists and things that I'm staggered. But what I've been saying to people is, it's time to define freedom. The other side has a future product to offer. It's tyrannical, but they've got a product. At the moment, we don't. Yeah. We're just saying, don't go that way. Yeah. So initially, to define that product, which is why I'm telling people this is a time for thinkers and philosophers, poets, artists, everything to work together. But how would you define freedom from your point of view?
Sure. Freedom is freedom to speak, freedom to believe what you want, freedom of conscience, to have certain beliefs, to practice those beliefs, assuming they don't go against the major laws. Obviously, you can't kill someone just because you consciously feel that you can.
Do no harm.
Do no harm. I think that a lot of people should have the right to own a gun like they used to. I think they should be able to actually, defend themselves and their family. If you look at Queensland, for example, the government's ability to sort out crime has just been terrible. Anastasia Palaszczuk is doing a terrible job with policing, and it shows. And a lot of people, they want to defend their family and their property, and they're not able to do that because of the restriction of access to a lot of gun ownership and use of the gun ownership. I can't own a gun. Why not? Because if I say something and the police suspect that I might go out and shoot someone because of what I said online. No, it doesn't even have to be inflammatory. It could just be me being very harsh against Gladys Berejiklian during the lockdowns. And I know this because this has happened to people, a number of people in New South Wales. The police rock up. They have the right to rock up. They take your guns because of some law which says suspicion of what's going on. They might even slap on a firearm prohibition order as well, where they can check your vehicle at any time, even when you're driving around. We've seen people where they've been harassed by this kind of thing. That's why I can't own a gun. Doesn't mean people in my family don't own a gun, so don't get any ideas. But me as a public personality, it's difficult, and that's annoying. Because, you get these other people, like these celebrities, they can afford to have private security, have walls around where they live, and have building security. I can't have that. No. And that's fine. I can adapt with that. But in time, I do believe we need to take a look at what the Americans got right and what's allowed them to hold on to a lot of their freedoms a lot better than Australia. I think a lot of that goes back to gun ownership, and a lot of people, they won't like me saying that. But it's the truth. In Australia...
I'm hearing that a lot across the country. There's two narratives. There's the public narrative, which is on TV, which I actually don't listen to. And there's the people talking who I get these gatherings and they talk. That's one thing they talk about a lot. Yeah.
Well, one of our crowd is very hardcore on that. They but mainstream Australia, they do not feel the same, and you need to recognise that. A lot of people need to recognise that. It's going to take significant, alternate messages, alternate media, alternate education on the topic to actually do that. A lot of people think that we got it right with Port Arthur. A lot of people think that what John Howard did with getting rid of the guns was right. A lot of people agree with a lot of the gun restrictions in America. Why? Because what happens is there's, a handful of shootings that happen every year in America, and I don't want to underwrite it. Every death is tragic that happens in America, and a classroom full of kids gets shot up, and it's devastating. It's devastating. No child should be worried about what happened with the school, their school's safety. No parent should have to worry about that. But the reality is the amount of laws that have been created in many states, red flag laws, laws where you're not allowed to take a gun into an area as well. These are different types of laws. Laws where you can't take, it's a gun-free zone. You can't take a gun in there. Universities, for example. Criminals go to those places because they know it's a gun-free zone and they know they won't find a good guy with a gun, and they shoot up the place because they know they can get away with it. There are evil people out there, and recognizing that.
Do you think that's one of the problems we're facing now, is people can't fathom that evil exists?
Yes. They all want their utopia. They all want to think that things are fine and whatever. Peace is a rare thing historically. People, as I said a million times, this conversation, people don't know where they come from. They don't know history. A lot of professors in university don't understand history. They don't understand that, Hitler took away the guns, Stalin took away the guns, and then they were able to get away with whatever they wanted with the population. They set up the gulags, they put the Jews away, they killed all of, the disabled people. I mean, this is exactly what is going on in other countries historically. So why do we think that in Australia in the 21st century, it's not going to change? Human nature is the same. We've got some cool gadgets. We like to all wear suits now. We like to, frown upon in Australia people that muck up. But it doesn't mean that basic human nature, when the crap hits the fan, that it's just going to be all fine and dandy. No, things can get ugly very quickly. And when we have a weak society with weak men, weak women, don't understand how things work, it makes it even worse. Because when the crap does hit the fan, we have no way of stopping it. Now, guns are an example of that, where we allowed guns to be demonized. In America, let me give you an example. Everyone focuses on the negatives of guns. Some 30,000 people die every year from guns. Half of them are suicides. Okay, let's put that aside, because that's consistent with the suicide rate in other countries. No worries. They just choose to use guns to do that. It's not like it's increasing the amount of deaths. So you've got 30,000, 15,000 suicides. A third is then also to do with gang-related crime. Okay, there's the rest. The remaining amount, accidents, a kid, shooting himself from his parents' gun because the gun wasn't locked away safely, and it should be, and there's laws against that. You've got to put it in a safe with ammunition. And there's other ones where it's, shootings that happen in schools, and it's more often not an automatic weapon. It's usually a semi-automatic weapon and a pistol. In those situations, we're focusing on a few thousand deaths. Let's contrast that with what the good that guns do, because people forget that guns actually deter crime. I do believe in 2018 there was an FBI report which showed that there were anywhere from 500,000 to 5 million occasions where a gun stopped a rape, stopped a murder, stopped a home invasion, where people were going to die and be tortured. That is an amazing level of good. It's not just about the one story. It's not just about the story of Johnny dying because of a school shooting. It's also about the massive amount of women that didn't get raped because of it, because they had a gun. It's the great leveler. In 99.8% of occasions, something like that, where a gun's been present, a woman has been able to stop the rape because a guy was coming onto her. That's great. Aren't we pro-women's rights? A lot of the same people that try to tell me that, I don't believe in women's rights, or women, I'm misogynistic against women. I'm the biggest feminist there is. I think women should have a gun. It's a great leveler with rapists. That's great. The amount of mothers that have saved their child from being abducted because they whipped out a gun at a zebra crossing and stopped their kid from being snatched. Beautiful. That's great. We need to focus on the good. And this is the thing. A lot of people don't understand that, and that's fine. It just means that we don't get the benefits of having that right, because it's the Second Amendment in America.
But the Second Amendment was there not to protect against external enemies, but internal.
That's right. It's certainly a deterrent for overseas countries invading America. I think it was a Japanese general in World War II who said, behind every blade of grass in America, there's a gun. Now, why would you want to invade? That's a great point. But yeah, you're right. It's also against government tyranny. It's to make the government think twice. An armed society is a polite society. If you think that you can just trample on the rights and storm through the door, a police officer is going to think twice before going out and doing that. And he's going to be a lot more polite in the way that he does it. Now,
that's the interesting thing. Bossy said something to me too, not to me. He said it in a speech, and there's something of his, that the Constitution was there to protect us from our own nature. I don't know if that came from you, if you gave him that, but I love that, because this is where we are now. They're overriding it. Our nature has crushed it and made it. And that's the other thing too. Most people my age, one, we didn't know we had a constitution. We couldn't recognize it and don't know anything about what's in it.
The Constitution comes from a time when people really grappled with what it is to make a great country. The Australian Constitution came after the American and a lot of the European constitutions, so we got the benefit of our scholars in the time were able to look at the other constitutional examples around the world and be like, okay, these three countries, they got this right, they got that wrong, this is what we came up with. And it's really good because there's these checks and balances which allow us to actually keep certain branches of government accountable to the others, and also all come back to the grassroots, the people, and that's really good. Also, with democracy has often been described as a sheep and two wolves voting for what's for dinner. I think that in an armed society, you have the sheep is armed, and they're able to defend their own rights. It's the great equaler. Not to be tyrannical, but to be more of a polite society where we respect other people's opinions. The other thing on guns is we've got to recognise that, let's not be naive, we live in a great country, Australia. It's really good. In the American context, it doesn't make sense to take guns off good people because the criminals, they're criminals. They don't care. An extra law is not going to deter them from getting a gun and doing what they're going to do with it. So it doesn't make sense over there where you've got 330 million guns to not have guns for good people. In Australia, slightly different context. I still think we should have guns here, but it is good in the sense that I feel perfectly comfortable walking up to my Premier in New South Wales. In fact, I saw Dominic Perrottet the other day having coffee, and I said hi to him, only briefly. There were a lot of things I wanted to ask him about, but it was only brief. And I was just shocked because I was like, wow, I could just go up to this guy and he's right there. I was like, where is his security? There was no one with him. And I'm not trying to incite anything against him. I wouldn't want harm to come to any of, the premiers physically. But I think that, we do live in a good country in the sense that there is a peaceful transfer of power from one government to another. There's no violence. There's a peaceful conversation you can have with your state representatives. Even if they ignore you, even if they whatever, they don't have to constantly have guns, people armed with guns around them. I think that's a cool thing about Australia. We might lose that once we arm the population. That's something, let's be intellectually honest about that. But would we rather have that? It's a trade-off. I think that the benefits far outweigh the downfalls. If we have guns in Australia that have better access, less restrictions, we should have background checks on people, absolutely. But I think that it's very important that we recognise there are some great benefits that deter government tyranny like that. I don't want to see another woman raped when I know that a gun could have saved that situation if she had one. Make rapists think twice about that. Instead, we have to deal with the crime after the fact, and we've got to talk about different policies like chemical castration of rapists, which might be something we should look at. But yeah, so that's the situation.
Do you think, just in wrapping up, moving forward, that the first step of moving forward is defining who we are as Australians, and then deciding who we are, then where do we want that? The destination will maybe almost reveal itself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, in many ways, we've been doing that the last couple of years. We've been trying to work out when the craps hit the fan with the pandemic and the government, mandated lockdowns. We've been working out that we don't like people getting mandated the jab in the workforce. We worked that out. And a lot of people have come around on that, even the vaccinated have come around on that. But a lot of people have had to grapple with ideas of free speech on being censored online. They found it very annoying. Some average people getting censored online for their views on the pandemic. They've come around on censorship. And that's been good. That's been good to see. So when the crap hits the fan, it's a reality check for a country to work out what they stand for. And that's what we've been going through. So it's a process which is already happening. But we've got to have these little updates every few years. I might have talked to you in the past about the fourth turning theory, where in America they're having their fourth turning, where it's basically every 8 years when the crap hits the fan, in a world war, in a civil war, in a rebellion against the crown, they have to work out and grapple with who they are and what they're doing. The constitutional document they've had there has stood the test of time. In Australia, our documents come up wanting. It's implied we have free speech in our constitution, but that hasn't held up.
Yeah.
That hasn't held up. The government, didn't guarantee free movement even across state borders, even though, it's supposedly enshrined in the constitution. We need to fix that. We need to make sure that we update that, and I think people recognise that they want free travel, and so those are things that we need to do. Now, whether we do anything with it, we'll see in the next, few decades. But I think that, when it comes to defining what we stand for, it's only when crap hits the fan that we have that window of opportunity to amend our documents and work out who we are and what we stand for. But a lot of that comes back to education, and we're fighting an uphill battle in the schools with that. And so yeah, that's where we go from here.